Hey guys, Michael here, and you guys are watching or listening, preferably, to part 3 of creating a competitive team for Pokemon Go. And this episode will probably look more into Generation 2. I know I was going to talk about, on the last part I said I'd probably be looking more at some of my defensive teams or my ice team, stuff like that. But I think I'm more with all the rumors, everything coming up of probably seeing Gen 2. I know some people are saying legendaries or mythics, stuff like that, but I think I'm going to look more into Gen 2 and I'm going to factor some of that in. This will kind of go a little bit around two, two kind of big things, one of which are two ideas I'm looking into. I've been talking before about Fairy isn't a really big deal in Gen 1. In Gen 2, it gets a much stronger Pokemon that has almost 1,000 CP more than most of, or about 600 CP more than most other Fairy Pokemon in the game, and it will probably have double Fairy moves. So Fairy is going to be something we're going to have to consider a lot more. The other things are a Pokemon we probably don't want to put too much emphasis on is Ghost type. Mostly because the biggest one after Gen 2 is still going to be Gengar. Gengar is a good ghost, but he still has poison, so he's weak to a lot of things. He's still weak to Psychic, and most of the time, even if you're doing 1 times damage, you're probably going to, because of Gengar's super low HP, and based on most of the stats, most ghosts have super low HP or super technically low stamina bars. So they're going to have low HP, so even though they might be doing some really good damage, you're going to be able to at least trade with them fairly easily. So Ghost isn't going to be a super major concern overall. The other thing is, a major idea is we will probably see Dragon. If everyone is only allowed to pick one Pokemon of each name, so you can't just run a team of 6 Dragonites, you have to run only one Dragonite or one of slot Pokedex number whatever. Maybe you're allowed to use a Dragonair and a Dragonite, but who would really use a Dragonair? But that might be a consideration. But if that is the case, there needs to be a lot of emphasis on stuff that counters Dragon. So, mostly that is Ice and Dragon and Fairy. These are 3 things that need to be looked at a little more prevalently, just because this is probably going to be something that everybody is going to be running. I would probably lean more towards Mewtwo if Mewtwo was a thing that a lot of people had, but Mewtwo's not in the game yet. Dragonite is, so everyone be prepared for it. But this is part 3, so I'm going to show you my third idea on how to design a Pokemon team, looking at stuff from a completely different angle. About this part in the video, I am throwing up the defender attacker chart for Pokemon types, and follow along as you're looking. But pretty much what I am doing is I'm making a giant list, and I am doing every single type and showing how many weaknesses each type has. So in order of, I mean, you could look at it and you could look at normal, and we could go through it that way and say fighting is the only strong thing weakness normal has, but we're going to go at it in the order I've assembled it, which is the stuff with the least amount of weaknesses, which are, of course, starting off normal and electric. Electric is only weak to ground. Next, you have fairy, poison, water, and ghost, which only have 2 weaknesses each. Fire, fighting, ground, flying, psychic, bug, dragon, dark, and steel are all sitting at 3. Ice has 4 weaknesses, but again, fire is only about a half a weakness, since again, most ice Pokemon have water as another stat. Definitely looking at Lapras and Cloyster, so fire's not really going to do much. Rock and grass both have 5 weaknesses. Sitting rock at water, grass, fighting, ground, and steel, and grass at fire, ice, poison, flying, and bug. So, we want to assemble a team, and we're going to use the stuff that has the least amount of weaknesses. This way, if we use the least amount of weaknesses, we probably aren't going to come across that many types of combinations that are going to have many strengths against us. It is going to have to have almost a very perfect assembled team that is going to have a strength against each of my 6 Pokemon, and mostly that would be probably just dumb luck if someone went up against me and had 6 Pokemon that all had strengths against my Pokemon. Another thing that I'm not going to really assume or anything, but starting Pokemon is going to be very huge. A lot of people might just try to assemble it. Top CP goes first, but I think there's going to be a lot of choice in the matter, and coming out strong might not always be... I mean, right now, if we only look at Gen 1, most people are going to lead off with a Dragonite. If that's the case, I'm almost always going to drop a Lapras, and another consideration is if people start thinking like that, then I'm going to run my Dragonite out first, but mine's going to have Steel Wing, so I'm going to trade probably with that Lapras, which is weak to Steel-based attacks. So there's going to be a lot of who decides to go first, or do you get to see what people pick, or what their starting 6 is, or is this blind, and everyone just picks one of their 6, and that's what starts off, and then there's an order? That's all going to be really huge, but I think it's going to be figuring out what Pokemon you want to start with every game is going to be a really, really big thing of determining what the other player is going to play up against and strats countering that. But again, we're looking at, if you want to also go to the Silph Road, go to their Pokemon chart, click the Gen 2 included, sort by CP, and let's go through it kind of like that too. But you got the type chart up, and you got the Silph Road. So normal, there's some strengths to it, but normal is not strong against anything. So if anything, I would run a normal, probably a Snorlax, as my 6th choice, just because it has very low weaknesses. But since it's only going to do 1 times damage against everything pretty much, it's not super great. It has nothing that it can really do better against. It's just kind of fat. It keeps up extra defense, extra stamina. So those are things to consider, but I just don't know how badly I want to throw a Snorlax into the fray yet. So this team is not going to include a Snorlax or a normal yet, but let's look at first Electric. Electric is going to be our first Pokemon, and while currently in Gen 1, we have Jolteon, and I apologize, my Gen 2 is horrid. Raikou, dog, kind of lionish electric Pokemon, is pretty strong, and it has a higher CP than even Jolteon in the grand total. So I'm going to throw that in as my first Pokemon. And it is weak to ground, but strong against water and flying. Next, we go down the list, and Fairy has some consideration. It's good against Dragon, and I really think in every deck you need to have something that's strong against Dragon. It needs to be either, it needs to be Ice, it needs to be Fairy. If you're running Dragonite, it's also flying, so Electric and Rock work well. I'm currently running Electric, so that's good, but possibly having, since eventually people will probably be able to run Dragon something else, make sure you have something that can counter the Dragonite. Right now, I've thought about it really hard, and I don't know how good the Fairy Pokemon is, the Grumble, or whatever his name is going to be. So I don't know if I'm going to run a Fairy in this deck yet. Yes, it would be really good to counter that Dragonite, and my Raikou is already going to destroy a Dragonite since he's also flying, so that's great. But at the same time, Dragonite has such a high CP, high attack, high defense, high everything. Ice really does the best, and Lapras really crushes him, but I don't know yet between the Fairy and the Electric, or if I really want both just to make sure that Dragonite goes down. But For now, until I see Fairy really come out strong in Gen 2, I'm not running it yet. As soon as I see a Fairy Pokemon with double Fairy and high CP overall, I'm probably going to switch out my team and push that in because Fairy counters Dragon, and that gives me two really good, strong Dragonite counters. And that's something very key in. But instead of Fairy, I'm looking at Poison first. And the only semi-decent complete poison Pokemon is Muck. There's a lot of people that really don't like Muck, but he's had high CP. He was in the old top 10. He's still in a good top 10 space. He's only weak to ground and psychic, and he's good against grass and fairy, which is super good. So if I'm probably going to run a Dragonite, then someone might be running a fairy or an ice. So at least the Muck counters that fairy if someone's running that. However, looking at this, we now have, like in my old idea, we have a double weakness to ground. So we need to counter that weakness heavily. And so, looking through the thing, what is strong against ground and also have very little weaknesses? Well, next on our chart is water. With only two weaknesses, grass and electric, it has a strength against ground. So we're going to throw in a water Pokemon. Again, I set up before Gyarados, and it was pretty good, but I still have that perfect Vaporeon, and I really want to get that perfect Vaporeon into my team. So I'm throwing that in. It's got high CP, good defense overall, and it's going to stop that double weakness we have to ground. It throws in just a grass and electric weakness, but that's not bad. We only have 4 weaknesses so far in this entire team of 3 Pokemon: ground, psychic, grass, and electric. That is awesome. Yes, there's a double weakness to ground, but that's really good for just the first 3 Pokemon. Also, these 3 are all not dual typed. They are all single type, and I think that's going to be pretty useful in the grand scheme of things. While dual type are pretty cool, they have more different types of moves, and they can get the stab bonus easier because they'll probably have moves that'll be of both types. But when you have a Pokemon with 2 different types, it has more weaknesses. It's not a super weakness, but it has more weaknesses and more chances of getting countered, though it has more types of strengths. So there's difference on opinion, and there will be on running more single type Pokemon versus just maybe 4 single type and 2 dual type Pokemon. That's going to come up. But for right now, I'm pushing more very like a 4 or at least a 3-3. I do not want to run a team unless they show Gen 2 and there's some super strong Pokemon that are all dual typed. Bug Steel, bug fighting, there's some cool stuff coming out, but unless it's got some really good moves that do good and counter other Pokemon pretty heavily, I'm kind of leaning towards more of 4 single type, 2 Pokemon with dual type that are strong. So Vaporeon is next on the list. It has a weakness to grass and electric. So now we don't have any more dual weaknesses, but let's keep following down the list. Next would be Ghost with very few weaknesses, just 2, Ghost and Dark. But again, I said Ghost is really bad, and I don't like Ghost because of how weak it is overall. It deals out the damage, but weak. So let's get looking at the next group. We're looking at the ones with 3 weaknesses. This is Fire, Fighting, Ground, Flying, Psychic, Bug, Dragon, Dark, and Steel. Steel has some potential in the next, probably more of a Bug Steel, but I'm looking through this weakness chart and I want something that's just a good CP powerful single type. First on my list is Fire. We're not doing Fire because that gives me multiple weaknesses to ground, so Fire is out. I'm very reserved against Fighting for the moment. It does give me all new weaknesses, so it gives me 1 weakness to things that I don't already have, Well, I guess flying has a double weakness at that point, but I'm not super liking fighting at the moment. Their moves are all slow. Machamp is the best fighting one at the moment, and with his slow attack animations and everything, I don't think Machamp is going to be a super big powerhouse. Niantic is going to have to do some move switch up or some changes in move damage, DPS, something that is going to make fighting slightly better. Ground, we already have a weakness to water. We already have the weakness to grass, and then ice is a new one. But I'm actually going to go with psychic. Psychic has a weakness to bug, ghost, and dark. These are all weaknesses I don't have yet, and it is strong against fighting and poison. So again, I said fighting is not super great, but there's a lot of Pokemon with poison. Ghost currently in Gen 1 is poison. A lot of grass has a poison with only, I think, Tangle in Gen 1 and worthless ones not having grass poisons dual type. So I also want to have a good psychic Pokemon. I've thought about Alakazam, but I think Espeon is just going to be so much easier. The Eevee evolutions are going to be major powerhouses. Vaporeon's already great. And I think Espeon, while it's going to have probably some low stamina, is going to hit pretty hard. So I'm thinking I'm going to try out the Psychic. I would love to also just have this team set up and then just have to swap out my Espeon for a Mewtwo when the time comes. So that's kind of where I'm leading with this. So now we have a weakness to bug, ghost, dark, grass, electric, double ground, psychic, and that's it. Not many weaknesses so far, and we're covering a lot of the overall stuff. Next, I've said before, I think Dragonite is still going to be a super big powerhouse. There's a few more Pokemon that I think might eventually go in the top. Of course, legendary birds, almost all mythic stuff. But, I mean, other than that, maybe a Tyranitar is going to be the new highest CP in the game. Well, okay, that's third highest CP, not including all the legendary birds and stuff like that, like Ho-Oh, Ho-Oh, and Mewtwo, and Lugia, stuff like that. But, not looking at legendaries too much so far, Tyranitar is Rock Dark. He will probably be up there along with Dragonite, but for now, almost everyone's really pushing towards getting that Dragonite, so that's the first thing I'm going to look at countering. So, if I'm running Dragonite, someone's going to try and counter with Ice, because now it adds I have Ice weakness, Dragon, Fairy, Electric, and Rock, and since I'm also flying also has a weakness to Ice, so I have a double weakness to Ice, Dragon, Fairy, Electric, Rock. So, what is going to help me the most on that Dragonite? People are going to probably run Ice against me, possibly another Dragonite, possibly Fairy. I'm a little worried about that overall, but the main two, most people aren't going to run Dragon versus Dragon because they're going to even trade, unless we're both on teams that are low towards the end. But people are probably going to run, and most people aren't going to think about flying. Secondary types are going to be key. If you remember them all, and you run up against a Charizard, don't think fire. Think flying, and throw in your, electric Pokemon, and electric Pokemon, just crush the Charizard, and people are going to think, like, what is going on? Oh yeah, I am also flying. But people are going to think first and foremost Ice and Fairy. Guess what? My Dragonite has Steel Wing as its fast move. So I'm probably they're going to throw that in, and people are also probably going to sit and wait on swapping out first. They are going to take a few attacks, try and dodge, and see what move your Pokemon has and possibly what charge move, because that's going to affect if I throw my Dragonite out, then they're going to be like, Steel Wing, oh, I'm not going to throw my Ice or my Fairy out yet because you're going to wreck me. But it's still something that can trade evenly, especially if they already put theirs out. I don't have a problem with throwing out my Dragonite because it's going to at least trade 1 for 1. So that is pretty good. And again, I've got 4 single type, and now I'm running 2 different dual type. And Dragonite is still the highest DPS. So I'm going to run the Dragonite. It's not going to be the highest DPS. The Steel Wings mostly run about 80 to 75 to 80% less damage than Double Dragon moveset, but this is still super powerful. Finally, after looking at all of these, I want to also have a type that's in the 3 bracket. I want to stay away from Ice, I want to stay away from Rock, and I want to stay away from Grass. These all have too many weaknesses. So I want to stay in the 3 bracket. Steel again doesn't have too much until you get the Bug Steel combination. I already running Dragon. Bug I'm kind of worried about just because I don't like Bug too much. Maybe a Bug fighting might be kind of cool, but I'm actually going to go with Houndoom, which is Dark Fire. Dark and Fire only have 3 weaknesses for each type, and that is really good, in my opinion at least. Yes, it still makes me super weak to ground, and this throws into 3rd weakness to ground. This is one thing I'm very not liking about this team so far, is that it is super weak to ground. So I might try to switch out my Dark Fire for something like something that isn't going to be weak to ground. So, I mean, I don't know. Not electric, not fire, not poison, not rock, and not steel. But maybe the bug fighting might be kind of cool, just because just because of what they can do, and that's a unique type. But for now, I'm going to run Dark. I want to keep make sure I have strengths against Psychic, Ghost, Grass, Ice, Bug, and Steel, which this Houndoom is probably going to have a basic fast attack of a Dark and a charge move of a Fire. This gives me some more versatility overall in my layout. I'm making a lot of assumptions. I don't really know, but if we look at all the attack stats, and if you know from my other parts, if it has both its fast attack and its charge move, it gets 1 point. Fast attack strengths get 0.75, and charge moves only 0.25 because of the time taking to charge it up. So it's not as useful as having a strength bonus against something, or super effective damage. So after looking at this team, we're running 1 times damage against fire, water. Grass, we're running 1.75 damage. We have no strength against electric. This is one concern I have about this deck also. Ice, we're running 1 times damage, fighting 1 times, poison, ground, flying all 1 time. Psychic, we're running 0.75, mostly because of the dark attack. Bug, we're running 0.25. That's with the extra fire, probably from Houndoom having a flamethrower. Rock, 1 times damage. Ghost, 0.75. Dragon, 0.25. Big concern of mine right there. And Fairy, 1 times. Dragon, I'm a little more forgiving of the 0.25, just because, again, Dragon is probably going to be coupled with flying, so that gives me a little over a 1 times damage overall on that. But again, Bug and Electric are my main concern. Bug, not super a lot. Yes, Gen 2 is going to throw in Bug Steel, Bug Fighting. Pinsir's already pretty good, so Bug is going to be something that needs to be considered. Don't look at the Parises and the Venomoths and stuff like that. Look at the again, the high end. The pincer with a submission possibly could be very different and something that most people aren't ready for. Again, electric is going to be a really big thing. It's something that you need to always be considering. You need to consider dragon, and you need to look at the three legendary types: fire, ice, and electric. These are the birds. Also, probably just Mewtwo, the psychics. These are all things that if people get, they are going to run. If you aren't going to have these, if you aren't able to get to events or whenever these are released, if you don't have these and someone else comes across you and they have one, these are going to have high CP, good stats, and they are going to wreck your team if you are not prepared. Especially, it's going to give them a major advantage of you if you go up in a fight and you don't have a single legendary bird and they have at least one or two. You got to be prepared. So not having a strength to electric is something that is not going to be good. Also, having a weakness to electric, like my Vaporeon, not only do I have a weakness, Dragon also has a weakness, but I have no strength against it. So, not a bad team. I still want to fiddle with this team a little bit more, but again, it's pretty solid and it's making me pretty happy with this team, and I get to use both my Dragonite with Steel Wing and my perfect Vaporeon. Super excited about that. So, overall, not bad. I have shown you now 3 different ways of coming at teams, and all 3 of these teams are very similar. With Dark Fire or the Dragonite with Steel Wing, the Vaporeon or Gyarados, Electric Base or the Grass Psychic. All of them are very, very similar teams. So, this is probably going to have a very high chance of being very competitive. This combination of Pokemon, there probably is going to be like a single Pokemon changeout or 2, but these are going to be super well-based or well versatile teams. Also, I don't think everyone's going to think this way right off the bat. So it's good to start getting your brain. While we could be months away from battling, if you go into battling and you've already set up the team you want and you've been working at getting amazing stats or perfect Pokemon in trades, and you get the ones with the stats you want, people might be giving away Dragonites with Steel Wing, not even thinking about it at all. They'll be like, I want a Dragonite with double dragon attack. So they'll be like, I have 2 Dragonites, one with double dragon and one with Steel Wing. I'll trade off the Steel Wing for a Venusaur or a Charizard or something. No problem. But look for those things, because that is where you're going to get great trades that people aren't going to realize. This Pokemon with this stats and these movesets are a lot better than people think. So start thinking about it now, so when it comes time to battle, you can be the best there is.